بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونشكره على هدايته ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we get closer to the middle of the month, I think our prayers and invocations should be intensified for acceptance and for our sins to be forgiven. I pray that your prayers, fasting, du'as, supplications, invocations are all inshallah accepted. And we begin to purify ourselves before we know it, the month of Ramadan, the best opportunity in the year is past. And Abi Abdullah alayhi salatu wassalam, إن الحر حر على جميع أحواله إن نابته نائبة صبر لها وإن تداكت عليه المصائب لم تكسره فاصبروا وطنوا أنفسكم على الصبر تؤجروا. A free-spirited person will act freely in all circumstances. Should a misfortune or calamity strikes him, they bear it with patience, sabr. Calamities will not shatter them. They remain steadfast. So be patient and reconcile yourself to the patience in order for the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll get back to this hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullah salam alayhi. But in the interest of time, I would very, very briefly recap some of the points that we discussed last night. The final time of wrapping up the two lectures about the phenomena that these days we have to deal with, particularly with regard to our kids, the youngsters, adolescents, that generally speaking, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, they really have no respect and no reverence for the elders, parents, grandparents, etc. I cited a hadith that from Imam Zain al-Abidin salawatullah salam alayhi, that in the treatise on the book on the right, which explains the right of individual different classes within the society, including the right of children over their parents. Following up to the verses in the Holy Quran that talks about وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ, Surah Isra and Surah Luqman. Sisters, please. So bearing in mind that, I said, Imam Zain al-Abidin in this hadith says, وَأَمَّا حَقُّ وَلَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ أَن تَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ مِنْكَ وَمُضَافٌ إِلَيْكَ وَإِنَّكَ مَسْئُولٌ عَمَّا وَلَّيْتُ. The right of your child on you is to understand that you have brought this child into existence. And naturally, you are responsible for the affair of that child. Whether that child grows up as, call it Salman Farsi or Abu Dhar, or drops down to the lowest of the low, first and foremost is the parent's responsibility. وَإِنَّكَ مَسْئُولٌ عَمَّا وَلَّيْتُ. You are responsible for what you have, the environment that you have created for the child to grow under. مِنْ حُسْنِ الْأَدَبِ. So part of the responsibility is to teach ethical and moral principles, but within the context of what وَالدَّلَالَةُ عَلَى رَبِّهِ. Faith has to be a significant component of the child's lifestyle. If we as parents don't do that, our responsibility, don't discharge our responsibility, don't pay attention to the concept of faith and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no spark in the heart of a child to connect him or her with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you shouldn't expect later on, single out the respect for the parents. I expect this to happen, where the child has no conception of what is the moral principle, on what basis I should do this, or why should I do it. This is something that part and parcel of the parents' responsibility. And then فَمُثَابٌ عَلَى ذَلِكَ وَمُعَاقَبٌ. Imam Zain al-Abidin says, you will be rewarded if you discharge your responsibility, and you will be punished if you don't. Remember, at the end of the conversation last night, I said our ahadith say that there are longevity and long life for anybody can be gained through three channels. Number one, you open up a social public kind of institution in which people come in and they benefit from it. Every time they come in, even if the plaque doesn't say Mr. So-and-so or Hajj so-and-so, the fact that it is there, other people come and benefit from it, is enough for the reward to be given even when I depart. There's a story about Bohlul, which is an eccentric figure, whether it is mythical or not. They say he existed during the time of Harun Rashid. And he was an eccentric character. That moral principle, he said what is right, and he wasn't afraid of saying it because everybody said, well, his mind is gaga. So they didn't do anything about him. He was passing a big mosque and saw a label stuck in front of the door of the mosque. This mosque is the mosque that Hajj Fulan has already built. He said, okay. He passed by at night. He came back, removed the plaque, and he said, this mosque is Bohlul's mosque, and stuck on the front of the door. Tomorrow, Hajj Fulan came in. What? A sacrosanct. His name has been removed, and somebody else's name has been stuck on this. Who's done it? Bohlul. Bring him in. They brought Bohlul in. Did you do it? Yes, I did. Why? This is my mosque, my building. He said, yes. You built it for the sake of Allah or for the sake of riyah and ostentation before people? If you build it for the sake of Allah, Allah knows who built it, whether it's your name on it or my name. If you did it for the sake of ostentation and riyah, you're not going to get the benefit anyway, because it's a shirk. So what we have to be mindful that we will be rewarded and punish depending on whether we discharge our responsibility. So number one is the social institution. Number two, you become a scholar in your field and you develop a number of students, you pass the knowledge, teachers and so on. They bring the kids in and they teach them about recitation of Quran, hadith and so on. When they grow older, they remember that the foundation of the Arabic language or Urdu language or anything else was created and solidified in such schools. And what do they say? May God bless the soul of our teachers. I still do it. The third, specifically for the parents, is what we call Khalafus Salih. Khalafus Salih are kids that you bring up but with a strong moral and ethical foundation that represents your moral and ethical foundation. So every time they go around and behave, when other people see the child, boy or girl, they behave in a particular moral manner, may God bless the soul of the parents that brought them up. So that's something that Imam Zain al-Abidin is saying. If you want your kids to be able to be respectful, create that moral foundation and the ethical foundation that they understand. When Quran says وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا, this is a command that after worship of Allah, it has to be parents that come in. If they have no conception of it, the idea that now I expect them from tomorrow specifically to respect me, while we have the issue of the ethical and moral principles absent. This is the fundamental issue. Tonight, I'm going to go back to the hadith that I recited earlier, and that is the concept of sabr and patience. As we go through the month, we suppose, as part of purification and tazkiyah of the soul, remove some negative concepts and negative beliefs from us, or negative traits and characteristics, and replace them with few positive ones. We talked about few negative characteristics, and we talked about one or two positive ones. Sabr, or patience, is one of those, the seven virtues that even Christianity, Judaism, and other, even non-monotheistic faith, secular, they still claim that virtue, the sabr and patience, is a virtue in society. Now, patience is, in a true form, is one of the most important character that a true believer should have. We have over 100 verses in the Holy Quran that in one way or another addresses the concept of sabr or one of its derivatives. So it's one, and sabr means in a true form that one would make all the struggle when we are confronted with calamities of life, not to allow calamities to misguide us or break us down. There is a hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullah salam alayhi that says, says you can divide the Shias into three different categories. There are those who are Shias by just paying lip service to being Shia. Deep down, there is no foundation, they don't practice it, but in appearance, they say we are Shias. The second one are a group of people, they say they are like glass, clear, but they have no power to resist the calamities and stand fast. First calamity is like a knock on the glass and it shatters to pieces. The third group are those that, like gold, you dip them into fire and come out even shining more. So the notion of sabr and patience, staying on the right path, should be part and parcel of what we call a strong faith, and the true believer. They should possess it. Even you go back to Al-Asr, Surah Al-Asr, Inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhi, it gives you four characters. I mean, four attributes for the true patient, the true believer. Illa alladhina amanu, first, faith. Then at the end of it, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, then وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. They remain steadfast, supporting of justice and patient. Because without patience, in a conflict that we are having today, we cannot but be patient and persevere. There is another verse in the Holy Quran, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. Faith is first, then steadfast. No matter what, no matter challenges that you have, what happens if you remain steadfast? تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Then angels come and support them. Haqq, the support of haqq, opens the door to goodness. Sabr closes the door to evil. And there is a direct synergy or dynamic between the two. This is why وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. This is necessary. One thing we have to understand, all of us, that the cliche that we have in English language, the life is like a roller coaster. I'm sure even the younger brothers and sisters have heard this. Life goes up and down. Every one of you, particularly the young one, this is something that we have to teach our children. Don't expect your life, and in the future, whether you are a boy or you are a girl, to be an ideal life, no challenge, nothing. Far from it. You gain the experience and you become stronger through the challenges that you face. The only thing is that you should be able to learn from each experience and take this experience and move forward. So life is a roller coaster is an expression that we are going to face challenges in our life, whether it's financial, whether it's health-wise, whether it's position and job, whether it's whatever it is. There are partners, challenges in life with partners and difficulties with partners, etc., etc. The sabr and patience is needed to be able to roll through this roller coaster and come out at the end. تتنزل عليهم الملائكة. Not to allow, going back to the early hadith, have a firm resolve not to allow the calamities of life to break us down and immediately begin to complain. There is a hadith from the Holy Prophet that says, الصبر على ثلاثة أنواع. الصبر ثلاثة. صبر على المصيبة، صبر على الطاعة، وصبر على المعصية. There are three different types of patience. There are patience that before calamities, when you face calamities of life, you really are patient. And you have a resolve to be able to go through it without being affected by it. And constantly, the verse in the Holy Quran, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ultimately, you resort by going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that connection will support you to go through it. And the second one, sabrun ala ta'ah, that we should by now, the purification, قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها, but purification, that sabr here means to have the resolve to submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and encourage ourselves to do so. Shaitan is going to say, well, you don't need to pray. It's too early. Go back to sleep. Month of Ramadan is like any other month. Pack everything down late in the afternoon, do the prayer, and Allah would accept. You don't need to purify. Allah would forgive. This is something that at the beginning, the third or fourth night, I said satanic great block in our life, constantly giving us the false impression that we can do it tomorrow or the day after or 2 years from now or 3 years from now, etc. Particularly, this is critical for the younger generation, that sinfulness has not become habitual for them. I hope not. It's easier for them to say, I repent and steadfast. But for seniors like myself, it's like either a crooked stick or something that requires a huge amount of effort to straighten it. Concept of Tawbat Nasuh becomes problematic. And third one, patient before violating Allah's command. Shaitan encourages you to commit sin. Sabr here means to tell yourself that I am not going to do it. Remember the story of Yusuf? قالت هيت لك قال معاذ الله. You have to reach a point in which when temptation are presented to you, immediately step back. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I'm not going to do it. That's sabr and al-ma'siyah. There are stories in the Holy Quran. All of the stories in the Holy Quran have an inherent wisdom within them if we are able to remove just purely focusing as a story. The story of Ayub, Job. The crisis that he went through, he lost everything, and he constantly said that I'm going to stay focused, and I only take refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah to resolve that's sabr. The story of Musa and Khidr is another example of sabr. Musa goes to Khidr and says, can I join you and stay with you so that you teach me some of those hidden knowledges that you have? He said, you cannot do it. قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. Why? وكيف تصبر على ما لم تحط به خبرا. How can you be patient over something that your comprehension does not reach it? I am operating under different code, and you are operating under a different code. I operate under the direct command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You operate under the concept of law. And this is why he couldn't stay with him. They agreed that first, I told you you cannot do it. Okay, next question. I told you cannot do it. Then he said, if I ask you a third question, that's it. And ultimately, Khidr told him. The story of Yaqub and his children is another example of sabr and patience. They take Yusuf away. They drop him in a well. They come back with a concocted story about him being eaten by a thief, by a wolf, and they present the clothing with some fake blood on it. That look, Dad, the wolf took him. Yaqub looked at it. Can you imagine a wolf taking somebody without making scratch or anything on the clothing? This clothing is perfect condition when he left. So what did he say? He said that I turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Innama ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah. In the front of calamities, I fasabrun jamilun. Wallahu al-musta'anu ala ma tasifun. I take refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah to. This concept of sabr repeatedly, not only in the verses, in the stories that we have in the Holy Quran. We have, and ultimately, there is hadith. I'm just going to quickly finish because of the time. There is a hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullah salam alayhi that says, Al-Jannatu mahfufatun bil makarih. Jannah and heaven is wrapped through challenges in life. Why? Because I have to resist ego. If I want to go towards heaven, I have to resist ego. فَمَنْ صَبَرَ عَلَى الْمَكَارِهِ فِي الدُّنْيَا دَخَلَ الْجَنَّةِ. This is sabr, encouraging myself to do good and to resist evil. وَجَهَنَّمْ مَحْفُوفَةٌ بِاللَّذَّاتِ وَالشَّهَوَاتِ. Jahannam, you want to go to Jahannam, you only need to follow your ego. That's it. Very simple. You don't need to pray, you don't need to fast, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that, you don't need to make a contribution for the mosque, you don't need to pay anything, you don't need, just follow your ego and your ladhat, the material lifestyle. That makes sure you have a red carpet straight to heaven, to hell instead of heaven. The other one is challenging. If you want straight some kind of a red carpet to heaven, there are a number of things that you shouldn't do and a number of things that you should do. This is the month. And ultimately, there is a verse in the Holy Quran that our Ahl Bayt have said that it is sabr here is to do with fasting. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabr was-salat inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. That this sabr, because it's made parallel, or at least when put it into the context of salat, it means fasting. It purifies. And this is the month of purification that we really need to spend some time. And if we miss it, then who knows? It's tragic that the end of month is beginning to come and we really are not prepared yet. Tomorrow, the day after, Layal al-Qadr starts, and before we know it, Layal al-Qadr is finished, and the end of the month approaching, and who knows until next Ramadan. I pray to Allah. By the way, tomorrow is Ayyam al-Bid, the 3 days of 13th, 14th, and 15th of the month of Ramadan, and the dua mujir that you read tonight is highly recommended during the 13th, 14th, and 15th day. You can recite it during night or during the day, but the recommendation is during the day. There is nothing to stop you reciting it during the night. And since the issue of Gaza and Palestine was mentioned, I want to remind everyone that Every day I think I have seen enough atrocities, and the Zionist regime cannot go below this, the concept of asfal al-safilin that Quran talks about. And then an image comes, see how deeper they are going, even below one could imagine. So the concept of inhum kal an'am bal hum adal, this is it, this is what we see. Now, not only bombing the Palestinians, the Americans and the Zionists are robbing them with concrete building block that was as a consequence of their houses destroyed, so they cannot build another house. They are taking them, and I can send you the picture of trucks after trucks, removing all these blocks from the cities to make what the Americans call this fanciful idea about a port. Rather than taking concrete blocks and everything from here, they steal it from the Palestinians to establish a base for their military, ultimately the one that would destroy the Palestinians. They really need our prayers, not only financial support, we really need to pray for them because they are in desperate shape. May Allah bless you all. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.